العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. So inshallah we want to continue our discussion regarding deeper understanding about dua. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to start by showing you two very short clips that somehow relate to dua. So basically, these are two duas, and then inshallah, we'll use that to start our discussion. So I'll be asking you to find what do you find different between these two videos, similarities and differences. Because inshallah, today's discussion is going to be different types of duas, or rather, different elements and sections we have in our duas. Because last time we spoke about the meaning of dua, what is a dua, and then today we want to move on and speak about the parts and elements of dua. So let's start with these two clips, and I have a very nice and powerful speaker, so we should have very good voice, inshallah. It's very short, 1 minute. محبوب من أتوجه إليه في أمري غير قبولك عذري وإدخالك إياي في سعة من رحمتك اللهم فاقبل عذري اللهم فاقبل عذري. It's one video, very short. You can even mention what you observed in the video because it's a dua. Let me show another video. Although this video has a longer segment, but I couldn't find with English subtitles, so it has parts.
ما مولای ما دعا کن برای ما صاحب ما تویی صاحب این کشور تویی صاحب این انقلاب تویی پشتیبان ما شما هستید ما این راه رو ادامه خواهیم داد با قدرت هم ادامه خواهیم داد در این راه ما رو با دعای خود با حمایت خود با توجه خود پشتیبانی بفرما سید ما مولای ما.
So that's it. Let's now go to the presentation. Yes. Sorry, opened the wrong one. It's not there. Okay. Please recite salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So yes, I think we'll start a discussion. Those of you who saw the videos, anything you want to say about these two videos? Both of them were du'as, right? Some kind of a dua. So similarities, differences, common things, anything. I wanted to bring more samples, but I think two will do. Yes. So one common thing you see is that both videos, people were crying. So we'll come back to that. What does it mean? What's the relationship between dua and crying? But it's happening in the setting of dua. People are shedding tears. Okay, so that's one thing we notice. What else do you see? Even differences. So we saw two clips. Were they the same, or what were the differences? Yes. So that's a very important difference to notice. The first one is the words of the Ahlul Bayt, Dua Kumail being recited. Of course, who knows the person who was reciting, the scholar? Do you know? He's very famous in Iran. Too famous to not know. Put you in the tight spot. No one knows who is the person who is reciting. His name is Ustad Ansarian. Okay. He was also very close to Imam Khomeini when he was very young. There's a very nice photo of him sitting next to Imam Khomeini, and his abaya and Imam Khomeini's abaya is like intertwined, and they're laughing. Like he got too close to him. He's the one who has translated Quran. He's translated Mafatih al-Jinan. He's written I don't know how many books. And his dua sessions in Tehran. So in Tehran, there's a place called Husayniyya Hamadaniha. So he's originally from Hamadan. So people from different cities, when they go to other places, they build a Husayniyya of from their locality. So there is a huge Husayniyya called Husayniyya Hamadaniha. His dua program, like his Laylatul Qadr programs, might easily attract like maybe 100,000 people. It's packed and it fills the roads. And you can go and watch it online. His Dua Abu Hamza or the duas he recites during the Laylatul Qadr, literally the whole time he's crying. From start, like, as soon as he starts dua, he's like crying. And it's like it's something different. It's very, even you watch on television, you're like overwhelmed of how it is. So that's Ustad Ansari, and the difference is clear. He was reciting Dua Kumail, words of Ahlul Bayt. The other one was the Dua where he's speaking his own words. Right? Okay. So that's an important difference. What else? Similarity is different, something that, although the clips are very short, I wish I could show you larger portions. Anything you notice? Yes? So that's a good thing to know. So the first one has a melody, it was with a tune. The second one was you just talking. Although if you've noticed, in the first one, towards the end, he stops the melody and starts speaking normal. If you have noticed, he's doing it in a melodious tone. But the time comes where he repeats the same thing without the tune. That's something to notice as well. There's one very important difference which I'm looking for. If you don't tell me that, we can't proceed. Yes. Exactly. So that's what I was looking for. That if you observe carefully, in the second clip, he was not actually talking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? In the first one, which is Dua Kumail, you're addressing your words to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so you're talking to him. But in the second one, he was talking to Imam of her time. And in fact, he was saying that he was talking to Imam Zaman and saying that, oh, Imam Zaman, you pray for me. So now this begs the question, like, and I'll ask you, is the second one dua or not? Where do you place it? Is the second type dua or not? Do you consider it dua or you do not consider it? What do you think? Is it dua? When you ask Imam something, he's asking for dua, which is right. He's asking Imam to do dua for him. But is this act itself dua? Will you call it dua or not? Yes. It's not prayer, it's calling out. What's the difference? How do you decide that? So, inshallah, with these questions and these things, we want to start the discussion. And we have a lot of exciting things today. Exciting for me, inshallah. I hope it will be exciting for you. Although a good part of today's session is going to be conversation. I'm going to ask you questions. So, do Bismillah again. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Inshallah, this is our aim. We have a course where we want to learn about the dua. And these are different titles that we have. So let me read it one more time as people are slowly joining. So it has a structure. So we started with the definition of dua as it's there in dictionary, in the Quran. Then we spoke about different types of dua. So a layman's dua and the dua of the special people. And then we spoke about the true nature of dua. So these are the three discussions we had in our first session. Inshallah, today's session mostly will be speaking about the fourth element. I switched the order. In last session, this was number 5, so I flipped the order a bit. So today we want to speak about the elements of dua. That when you're reciting dua, we need to know what actually is going on or what are we supposed to do. And inshallah, we'll finish that discussion today. Next week, we'll speak about why do we do these things in dua. Like, what's the goal? What's the purpose? What benefit does it do? So first, let's find out what to do and what happens in dua, and then we'll see why are we even doing a thing like this and why we have been told. So inshallah, that will be a discussion about benefits and goals of dua. So this is the outline of our course. Let's get started with connecting to the video. So the answer to this question, you guys, you people didn't give me the answer, is speaking to Imam dua or not? The answer to that is it depends on how you define dua. And there might be, like, in different places, you might have different ways to define dua. Sometimes you might have a limited definition where you say dua means only talking to Allah, talking to anyone else, including the Imam. We are not going to name it dua, we call it something else. Okay? For example, the common convention, and please note this, is that when you say dua, it generally means talking to Allah only. It doesn't include other people. That's how the word is defined. And again, I want to say this here that how do you define something is in our hands. But sometimes we have some conventions. Maybe 100 years down the line, the meaning of the word dua changes, how people use it. And they say, oh, even talking to Imam Zaman, let's call it dua. It's about naming something with a word, so it's not a problem. In other words, in very simple words, what I'm trying to say is that dua, in general usage, it means talking to Allah in humility. So your side is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what happens is that if you're talking to other than Allah and you have a relationship with other than Allah, that relationship where you're speaking to someone, in technical terminology, we are not going to call it dua, we'll name it something else. So a better way to describe what Ayatollah Khamenei was doing in the clip is that, what you would say, he was doing tawassul to Imam Islam. Rather than saying he was doing dua to Imam Zaman, which feels a bit odd, right? Like, you do dua to Imam. He was asking for Imam to do dua, but this action of speaking to Imam in that intimate like way, normally we call doing tawassul to the Ahlul Bayt. He's doing tawassul to Imam Zaman, making some requests to him. This is not called dua. Dua is only talking to Allah subhanahu. That's one difference. So basically, when we are discussing something, any topic, our definitions have to be precise. So I don't have to keep saying this again, but for our course that we are doing, dua only means conversation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You want to speak about how do you converse with Imam Zaman, inshallah, we'll have another course, we'll name it something else. Probably that's a discussion on tawassul when you talk to the Imam of your time. And um, the whole setting changes, the etiquettes change, the type of things you talk, they change. When you're talking to Allah, it's a different setting. When you talk to God, it's different. When you talk to other than God, it's different, although they may look similar. Both might have similar conversations, but in their nature, they're very different things. That's one point. The second point, which is even harder to explain, is that someone, okay, let me ask you this question. Someone asked that um, Allah is so close to us, right? Allah is very close to us. His promise, "Ud'uni astajib lakum." You call me, I'll answer you. He's so close to us. So why do we seek intermediary when it comes to getting closer to Allah? He's very close to us. Just directly go to Him, right? Isn't that? Someone actually asked me this question. And people ask that, why do you need a wasila? Why are you going long cut? Why you're taking, like, you find the wasila, you make connection with the imam, and then that has a role in getting closer to Allah. Why are you complicating stuff? It's very simple. Allah is very close to us, right? And you call out to Him, His promise, direct, and He will respond. So what do you answer? One answer is that, yeah, you're right. No, don't give it. So how would you answer? So the question is, Allah is close to us. We don't need a wasila. We directly go. Like, Allah is there. He said He'll answer you. So what's that? What's that? But isn't that contradictory then? So on one side, Quran is saying, I'm very close to you. Call out to me, I'll answer you, I'll sort you out. Another side, Quran is saying, okay, no. Take a wasil. So isn't you magnified the problems, made it worse. So how does it work?
I would say both.
No, they contradict, right? They are against each other. Like it's which is preferable? Okay, let me ask you. God is close to you. He's promised. You call him, he'll answer. On the other side, you have a long way. Both are valid because Quran says, so I'll take the shorter one. Just leave Basira. The answer, again, I need to proceed. There's a lot of things we need to discuss today. The answer is simple, and that is that talking to God and getting closer to God are two separate things. We're confusing here. Yes, Allah says, if you call out to me and you talk to me, I'll respond. It doesn't mean getting closer to me is easy. So, in other words, Allah is close to us such that if I call out to Him, He'll respond in different ways. But that doesn't mean I'm close to God. And getting closer to God is a hard thing where you need wasila. You need so many means to get closer to Allah. So it's possible a person might be very far from Allah, but when he calls out, Allah responds. So there is no necessary correlation between our ability to talk to God and me being closer to God. In fact, if you see, what do you recite in the dua of Rajab? Rajab is finished, so you've forgotten the dua. What's that second part? It's hard to, so you have to remember. How does the dua start? Ya man arjuhu likul. Ya man yu'til kathira. Ya man yu'ti man sa'ala. Ya man yu'ti man lam yas'alhu wa man lam ya'rifhu. So Allah not only talks to people who are away from Him, even gives them. Okay. So basically, our ability to talk to God and our ability to get things from Him is very different from being a close servant of God. Allah gives to non-Muslims. If non-Muslims call out to God, because what is the verses? إِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ. It doesn't say when the mu'mineen call out to me and close. It says, my creation, my servants, ibadi anni fa inni kareem. From Allah's side, Allah is close to all His servants. Ujibu da'wata da'i idha da'an. Even a non-Muslim calls out to God, there will be some response. But that doesn't mean that person is close to God. In other words, we need wasila to get closer to God. Talking to God is very easy. And it has different dynamics. I think I hope I was able to explain this. We'll think about this. But it's a bit precise. Okay, so let's move on. This was, we have not started our discussion, so let's get started. So, inshallah, our discussion today, after this introduction, so this introduction was there to clarify that dua just means our ability to talk to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Of course, in humility. When anyone speaks to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that state of humility, we can say this person is doing dua. But when you look at what happens in these du'as, especially the du'as that we have from Ahlul Bayt, it's magic. It's like a magical box, and you see that so many things that are happening in du'a. And we come to this conclusion, again, based on the verses of the Quran, the hadiths that we have from the Ahlul Bayt, and the seerah of the ulama, the conduct of the ulama is that, and I'm saying this with a lot of confidence, is that there is no servant who can get closer to Allah except that he is one of Ahlul Dua. He is a person who has a close connection to God. It's impossible. So if you see someone in whose life there is no dua, know for sure that he cannot be one of the close servants of God. It has to be there. Basically, it's such an important part that dua, if someone is close to God, it automatically means that they'll be reciting a lot of dua with a lot of quality. And it's considered a way to get closer and grow. So the same verse of the Quran. So at times, the Holy Quran, the last sentence gives you a lot of information. We usually don't read that, right? We read the main part of the verse. So this is how we read, right? إِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ. When my servants ask regarding me, tell them I'm Kareem. Ujibu da'wata da'i idha da'ani. I respond to their call when they call on to me. فَلْيَسْتَجِيبُوا لِي. Command. So Allah's command is that So answer to my call where I'm commanding you to do dua. So Allah is telling us, do dua, and this is my command. Give a positive response to my command that I'm commanding you to do dua. So dua is a command. Wal yu'minu bi, it's a sign of iman. If you do dua, you are accepting Allah's invitation to call out to Him. It's a sign of iman, and that's the last part, which usually end of the verse we get tired, and then that's la'allahum yarshudun. Do all of this, recite dua. It's a command of Allah. It's a sign of iman. Why? Because through dua you will grow. You'll have rushd and getting closer to Allah. So generally we should know that these du'as are something very unique and they should have a very prominent place in our lives. And of course we all have to try, and Sha'ban and month of Ramadan are the opportunity. So let's move on. Inshallah, we want to speak about the elements of dua. So what I mean by elements is that generally dua, when you talk to God, there's so many things that you can talk about. So last week Qaim was there, so he was asking that dua is like asking hajat, right? Other than asking hajat, what do you talk to God? Okay. So we'll see what do you talk to God. So I'm going to draw out a complete picture of so many different things that happen in dua. Although there were so many categories that my diagram has become tiny. Okay? So you'll have to like really focus to see because there's so many different categories. So let's do it slowly. So we have dua. Okay, it's very small. Dua at times, and one of the prominent portions of dua is asking for your hajat. So when you speak to Allah and make requests to Him, it's a dua. It's a part of dua. Now this asking for hajat comes in two forms. Either you ask for your material hajat, right? Okay. You ask for your material needs. And when it comes to our material needs, there are three things that you find in the du'as of Ahlul Bayt. Generally, when they're asking material things, they're asking us, ask like this. First, they say that make sure you ask for halal. So you'll see like, Allahumma rzuqni rizqan wasi'an halalan tayyiba. Okay? So this word halal repeats a lot in our du'as that when you're asking for your dunya, ask for halal dunya. Ask for tayyib. And such a good opportunity to ask you all, what's the difference between halal and tayyib? It's there, Allahumma rzuqni rizqan wasi'an halalan tayyiba. Quran also says that kulu min at-tayyibati min ar-rizq. So what's the difference between halal and tayyib? I can give one example and you'll sort that. Question is pizza halal or not? Is it tayyib? It's pizza. Okay, processed food with a lot of chemicals in it, a lot of additives, and I don't know, they even genetically modify nowadays. I don't know what that does to the things. Is it halal or not? But can you say it's tayyib? So what's the difference? What's the difference? Halal, tayyib. And sorry? So, but doesn't halal automatically mean it's beneficial? Are halal things not beneficial? Yes. How does it change the seed? Like what happens? Like, if I eat food that's not like this and I eat food, what's it? Yes. Halal is how it is acquired. No, at times halal is nothing to do with how it's acquired. The thing itself is haram. However you acquire it, like alcohol is haram, whatever you do. And of course, if something is haram, it's definitely not tayyib. So that we know. If something is haram, it's not tayyib for sure. But those things which are halal, they are of two categories. You can have halal, which is not tayyib. You have halal, that's tayyib. So very briefly, what they say is that opposite of halal is haram. Haram means those which are extremely harmful. So when you come in the category of halal, you avoid extreme harm. But when you avoid extreme harm, doesn't mean everything is good there. In halal category, you might have things which might be mildly harmful to your body, to your soul, to your spirituality, it's halal, but it's not ideal, it's not the best. Or in other words, tayyib are those things that give you much greater growth than other things. Okay? So it reduces those negative impacts. Anyways, that's a separate discussion. And the third thing in our du'as is that we constantly ask Allah to give us the material world in a way that it does not conflict with my spiritual needs. So when you look at the du'as and you look at what we ask about the dunya, we have these three things. You ask for halal, you ask for tayyib, and you ask that, oh Allah, do not make my dunya contradict my akhirah. Do not make my material world be in a way that it conflicts the spiritual world. Okay. So that's one type of du'as. There's a lot of categories. Let me move on. The second one is a good part of our du'as is asking for our spiritual needs, which again, there are too many to list. Okay. There's too many of them. So I'll give a few examples. So a prominent part of our du'as is, again, these are we are asking Allah for something. So one of that is asking Allah for forgiveness or istighfar. So you'll see it repeating a lot. Um, Asking Allah to remedy my spiritual diseases. So that's another spiritual thing. So dua makarimul akhlaq is half of it is basically this, that, oh Allah, keep me away from hasad, from kibr. So that's the spiritual dua. You're asking Allah to remedy your spiritual illnesses. Again, dua makarimul akhlaq. So that's the opposite of the second one, is that you're asking Allah to give you good akhlaq. That's a spiritual thing. You ask Allah. One of the other prominent spiritual du'as that repeats a lot is you ask Allah to give you ma'rifah, and that irfan and whatever that is. So that's one of the du'as. And when it comes to spiritual du'as, spiritual needs which we ask Allah to fulfill, the list is very long. So inshallah, the last part of our discussion, which we're going to reach very quickly, is that I'm going to show you snippets from du'as, and we're going to play a game. Basically, you have to tell me which dua it is, and you have to tell me which category it fits. Okay. So it's like we're going to match and think, and let's see. It will also be an opportunity to get a bit of acquainted with these wordings of the dua. So does it stop here? Is dua only asking hajat? No. In fact, at times, the minor portion or the less significant portion of dua is asking for your needs. The greater portion is talking to God and making that connection. You're not asking anything at all, but you want to talk to Allah. Now the question is, what do you talk about? So the first and a prominent thing that you talk about with Allah in du'as is you talk to Allah about His attributes and His goodness. You see, a lot of our du'as is just me talking to God that, oh Allah, how good you are. You have this good quality, you have this perfection. So this comes again in two formats. Sorry, I made it too mathematical. It's losing its charm. What could I do? I had to put it in some system. So when you speak to Allah about His goodness, it comes in two forms. Either you're doing His hamd, or you're doing His tasbih. And again, such a nice time to ask you the question, what's the difference between hamd and tasbih? So hamd is alhamdulillah, tasbih is that's not good. Like for us, it's like that, right? Hamd is saying alhamdulillah, tasbih is tasbih, right? You take it. No, what is the difference between hamd and tasbih? Yes. Thanking is shukr, praising is thana. So it's like and it's important that I'm deliberately doing it because these words are very precise. So see, you said thanking actually shukr. Praising means mad or thana, but here we're talking about ham. So then what happens? So you have so many words. So you have ham, you have tasbih, you have thana, you have mad, you have shukr. And what's interesting is, and we don't pay attention to this, that all of these have separate meanings. They are connected to each other. But when you look at them, they actually mean very different things. So shukr is very different from ham. But we're not going into that. I just need to know the difference between hamd and tasbih. Like what? So Quran says, Quran also like, Subhanallahi amma yushrikun. It's tasbih, right? Subhanallahi. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. So you see Quran has both hamd and tasbih. Anyone knows quickly what's the difference? Hamd means to pay attention and acknowledge the perfections Allah has. And not only acknowledge, even acknowledge that He has these perfections independently. He's not dependent. So even Hamd has that acknowledgement embedded in it, that you say that you deserve praise and only you deserve praise because you own these perfections. Tasbih is negating negative attributes from Allah. That, oh Allah, you are not like this. Oh Allah, you are not like this. And I'll give you examples of du'as are packed with this. Like at times we have a whole du'a that's just hamd. Nothing else. Like what happened to hajat? That's not important. Some of the du'as is just like praising Allah, or hamd is important. Sometimes we have du'as that's very strong in tasbih. You're just negating that, oh Allah, you're not like this, you're not like this, you're not like this. And that's why the Quran says that many people don't recognize Allah, they attribute things to Him which are not right. Ma qadarullah haqqa qadari. People have not valued Allah the way He's supposed to be valued. And therefore, Quran says that Subhanallahi amma yushrikun. Allah is above what all what all nonsense people attribute to Allah. He is free of those attributes. So hamd and tasbih is a very important part of talking to God. You're not asking anything. Does it stop here? No. There's a very important section, and at times you have whole du'as just focus on it, and that is, even I can't read it. Is a good part of dua and talking to God is when you express your own reality and connection to Allah. That's it. Which includes many things, just to give a few examples. So at times, you want to speak to Allah about your dependence on Him, how dependent you're on Him. That's a dua. You're talking to Allah saying that, look, Allah, I'm so dependent. Sometimes you're talking to Allah and expressing your weakness. You're talking to God saying that, look, I'm so weak. I'm not managing. Sometimes you're talking to Allah and expressing your difficulties. So you talk to Allah and say that, look, I'm in trouble, I'm in difficulty, I have this problem, I have this problem, this problem. Of course, after those difficulties, you also do dua. Like you express difficulties, is that, oh Allah, do something, like solve these for me. But for the imams and for those awliya, at times, asking for the difficulty to be resolved is secondary, or they might not even ask. Just talking to Allah and saying out your difficulty itself has benefit, which we'll speak about it in the next session. But I'm just describing what different things happen in dua. Sometimes you're expressing love to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, your connection. Say that, oh Allah, I love you. So you're expressing your situation when it comes to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Does it stop here? No. Our du'as have a very prominent element, and that's going to be the last one, and it's going to come there in the corner. I wish it comes. Is that a good part of our du'as is salutations to the awliya, to the Ahlul Bayt. It's part of the du'a. Okay. And that's why you say a lot of the du'as start with salawat. What is a salawat? It's a du'a for the Ahlul Bayt. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. To recite a salawat. So that's it. We have so many different parts and elements of dua. Of course, we have to notice, and I think it was rightfully noticed when I showed those two clips, and that was one of the reasons I wanted you to spot this, is that when you do dua, in all these forms, all of these, like we saw, right? Like there's 10, 15 ways, 10, 15 things you can do in a dua. There are two ways to do it. Either you can do it in your own words, which is fine, like how Ayatollah Khamenei was doing, although it was not dua, I was talking to Imam Zaman. But you can talk to God in your own words, and at times in your own language, and at times we have recommendations from ulama that sometimes we should do this. Yes, we have the du'as from the Ahlul Bayt, which is the main source of du'as, but sometimes you leave all of that aside. I know our tongue is going to be very, very not eloquent when we're speaking to God, because we really like, but it's good that at times you just sit and you talk to God in your own language. It's not going to be as good and elaborate as with all the adab that the Ahlul Bayt have, but it's good. Like you try it. You have your hajat, just ask in your language. Oh Allah, I'm really in a difficult state. Please solve it in English. And ask in Urdu, and ask in Gujarati, Swahili. Speak to God in your own language. And therefore, in mustahab prayers, you are allowed in kunut to recite dua in your own language. In wajib prayers, you have to recite in Arabic, right? Any dua. But in mustahab prayers, you can just like standing Musta prayers, you just talk to God like list all your hajat and say that, oh Allah, give me this, I need this, I need this. It has a lot of tarbiyati effect, making it a habit to ask Allah whenever we can, whatever we can, and in all states that we are. But I've written it here. It's very good to talk Allah. And again, it doesn't have to be asking hajat. Sometimes you can praise Allah in your own words. You can say that, Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah. I saw this today and this was like, this is a sign from you. So you're praising Allah. Or sometimes someone gets a negative thought about Allah, you talk to Allah, I say that you're not like this. I know you're not like this. So talking to Allah in all those different forms. But we know that talking to Allah in our words has limitations because we really don't know what to ask, how to ask, what are different things to say, and therefore we have this treasure of du'as from Ahlul Bayt. And probably, or rather I should say certainly, one of the signs that the madhab of Ahlul Bayt is the right madhab is these du'as. That's it. You don't need any other proof. Probably you don't need to prove Gadir, you don't need to prove anything else. You just show someone this, what you have in your du'as, and it's like, that's it. This is haq. Like, there's nothing closer, that nothing even comes closer to even one of the du'as in how elaborate they are, how eloquent they are, the topics they're discussing, how they're talking, the types of things that are being asked is like mind-blowing. It's like, so you're shaken. And we have had examples in history of people who would read these du'as and they're like, wow, this is... For example, the famous example in our recent time is William Chittick. So William Chittick is an American and his wife, Sachiko Murata, so Japanese. So William Chittick is an American, Sachiko Murata is Japanese. These were researchers into Sufism and those kind of Islamic themes. So through their research and everything, they get acquainted with Sahifa Sajjadi. So one of the best translations of Sahifa in English we have is of William Chittick. And they're so impressed that, I'm quite confident I'm saying this, that they both become Shia. They change, they're like normal researchers, impacted by the content and the meaning in the dua. It's like, this is something divine for sure. Of course, there are conditions to this, to appreciate this, which I'll speak about not next session, the session after, the etiquettes and aadab of dua. It's not possible for everyone to appreciate that. There are some requirements. So it might be that I have the du'as, but maybe I won't be able to appreciate what it is. Okay, one last point, and I'll quickly go through some examples. My time is up. This is important. And that is that at times, this is going to be weird, this is paradoxical. Read the talk. Although du'as from Ahlul Bayt are not always du'a, which means that in our dua collection and some of the du'as, you might have portions where you're not talking to God. So that's not technically dua, but it's part of the dua. So which parts? There are two parts. So for example, some of our du'as, they're called dua, but it's not a dua, it's actually tawassul. You're speaking to the imam. So that's not speaking to God. These are two separate things. And sometimes they get mixed. And it happens. So some of the du'as we have a mix. You're talking to God, suddenly you change your thing and you start talking to the Prophet. And suddenly you change, you start talking to God. Okay. For example, Ziyarah Jamia is like that. Okay. So the major part of it is you're talking to the Imam. So all the ziyarats are actually talking to the Imam. They're not dua. But last part of Ziyarah Jamia, you switch and you do dua. Allahumma law alimtu shufa'a afdala. So you recite the whole dua, you're talking to the Imam, and it's like literally turn and say that I gave my salams to the Imam. Now I ask you, because of him, do my shafa. So see, it's different in nature, right? And just because it comes as one package and we call it dua, doesn't mean it's all of it is dua. We need to be careful. In content, it's different. Okay? So sometimes you're talking to God, sometimes you're talking to the Imam. Probably it's best to not call it dua. Call it whatever. You say it's tawassul, it's ziyarat, it's salam, it's salawat. It has different dynamics. Separate topic to be discussed, inshallah, if we have. Okay, I'm done. I'll use a few minutes. I have, inshallah, let's do this. So we're going to play a game, which is guess which dua. So I'm going to show you a snippet. Some of these are easy. So basically, you have to tell me which dua it is. Secondly, if you know the meaning, you tell me. And thirdly, fit in the categories that I've shown. What are we doing in this? So I'll start with the easy ones. The first one is this. يا خير المسؤولين وأوسع المعطين اشف به سوء. Why did this come? Anyways, fine. اشف به صدورنا وأذهب به غيظ قلوبنا واهدنا به لما اختلف فيه من الحق بإذنك. Sorry, the order got flipped. I started with easy ones. Firstly, which dua it is? Which dua it is? Dua iftitah. Does anyone know the meaning? What's being said? Like, can someone translate? Or should I quickly translate? It's not difficult. It says, Ya khayr al mas'uli, or the best of one who is asked for. Like, you ask your haja. Wa awsa al mutin, and who is the most expansive when it comes to giving. So see, it's literally setting the stage for asking God. Right? You're saying that, oh, you're the best ones to whom people turn to ask, and you're the best giver, start your haja. Ishfi bihi sudurana. Give shifa to our hearts. Bihi. Who's that bihi? It's Imam Azam. So it's dua iftitah, right? So it's centered around him. See, it's a dua to Allah. You're talking to God. You're asking hajat. But somehow Imam is involved there. He has a connection. You're not. This is not even tawassul. You're not talking to the Imam. You're talking to God, but something is happening. Imam is involved in this whole process of dua. Because of him, remove the whatever the gaib, the I don't know. It's hard to translate. Is the difficulty and the rancor, the difficulty we have in our hearts. Wahdina bihi, and guide us with His help. Whatever differences we have, guide us through Him to resolve those differences. Which category will you fit in that diagram I had drawn? You're asking for spiritual hajat. So you're asking for a hajat. This is a hajat, right? It's an important hajat. That Imam comes, he does zuhur, so our differences are resolved through him. It's a dua, but it's a spiritual dua. Okay. Dua iftitah. Let's go to the next one. This is very easy. But yeah, let's. أيقنت أنك أنت أرحم الراحمين في موضع العفو والرحمة. It's first part. Second sentence. وأشد المعاقبين في موضع النكال والنكمة. Third sentence. وأعظم المتجبرين في موضع الكبرياء والعظمة. Which dua? It's dua iftitah. It's just the beginning part, right? Allahumma inni aftatihu. Let me translate. So translations. I have certainty that you are the most merciful of all the merciful if the situation is the situation of forgiveness and mercy. If the context is context of forgiveness and mercy, there's no one merciful than you. وَأَشَدُّ الْمُعَاقِبِينَ, and you are the severest in punishing if the context is the context of taking revenge. Needs sharh. I'm just translating. This needs explanation better. وَأَعْظَمُ الْمُتَجَبِّرِينَ, you are the greatest. Now there are two meanings here of what does mutajabbirin mean. I'll use one of those. You're the greatest of healers, because when the bone breaks, when that bone heals, it's called jabrul adh. So you are the greatest of healers. You fix things, you heal things, when it's the context of showing your greatness and your magnanimity. When you show your magnanimity, you heal things. Okay. This is a translation. Do I after that? Which category does this belong to? In that whole thing. Which category? We showed a big diagram. So it's hamd. You're remembering Allah for the attributes He has. So you're saying that, oh Allah, you are like this. Your perfections are such that this is how it looks like. So it's praising Allah, it's remembering His attributes. Okay, let's quickly go to more examples. Yes, sorry, the pictures don't change. I didn't get time, so you can. Otherwise, you can. Ilahi in haramtani faman dhalladhi yarzukuni. Oh Allah, if you deprive me, then who it is that will give me sustenance? Which dua? Najat Shabaniya. Okay. So Shaban. So which category will you put it? In that whole thing. Is it a hajat? You're asking for something? No, you're not asking for something. Like, are you doing any like hajat? Yeah. You're expressing your weakness. You're expressing your like how weak you basically expressing your weakness is, in other words, expressing your connection to God. Our connection to God is a connection of weakness. So whenever you truly want to describe who you are in relation to Allah, you just have to describe these things, because we are just like, so we are saying that, oh Allah, if you deprive me, I'm done, like I'm gone. So you're describing your position with respect to Allah, and it's a position of weakness, saying that if you don't give me risk, I'm done. Like no one can save me. So it's that part where you're expressing your weakness. Okay, let's go to some harder ones. Okay, this one is easy. الحمد لله الذي يؤمن الخائفين وينجي الصالحين ويرفع المستضعفين ويدعو المستكبرين ويهلك ملوكا ويستخلف آخرين. Which dua? Translation is similar. Praise be to you who gives security to those who are like those who have fear. You save the righteous people. You lift those people who are mustazaf, who are low. You bring down the mustakbirin, the arrogant people. You destroy the kings and you replace others in place of those kings. Which category it is? It's talking about negative things, but it's still hum. Basically, all these are positive attributes of God. It's negative for the receiver because of their own actions. Otherwise, this is part of hamd. We are not saying Allah is not like this. We are saying Allah is like this. Allah will destroy the oppressors. So this is actually a kamal and perfection in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that leads to Him destroying the oppressors. It's negative for the oppressors. From side of Allah, it's a reflection of His perfection, His whatever, greatness, grandeur, His power. So we shouldn't make a mistake that hamd only speaks about mercy and jud. No. Even these quote unquote jalali attributes are also positive attributes. Okay, I'm not explaining that, we can speak about it later. Okay, where's the hardest one? This I'll skip because we have had example. Okay, so let me read it and ask which dua is this. Irham fi hadhihi dunya ghurbati. Oh Allah, have mercy on my loneliness in this dunya. Irham fi hadhihi dunya ghurbati, my loneliness. Wa indal mauti kurbati, have mercy on me in that state of difficulty when I'm dying. Wa fil kabri wahdati, my loneliness in the grave. And wa fil lahdi wahshati, and when I'll go to barzakh, it will be like a new thing. Wahshat means when you go to a place that's so new to you, you get scared because it's so unknown. It's not just loneliness, you get scared because it's like you don't know what to do. It's a new realm in barzakh. Which dua it is? Say it loudly. Dua Abu Hamza. So it's an example. Which category you will put it? Very clear. Spiritual hajat. Like you're asking, you're not asking for a material thing. You're asking for spiritual. You're gurbat and you're worried about your spirit and your soul. So you're asking Him that save me from these negative states that might come on myself. Last one, yes. I hope so. No, second last, so let me quickly. Allahumma inni as'aluka sabran jamila wa farajan qariba wa qawlan sadika wa ajran azima as'aluka ya rabbi min al-khayri kulli ma alimtu minhu wa ma lam a'lam. Which dua it is? It's slightly hard to guess. Which dua? Allahumma inni as'aluka sabran jamila farajan karim qawlan sadika. No, it's not Dua Makari. It's Dua Abu Hamza. It's very long, so it's hard. It's like probably we started reciting, we never reached. It's like that's how it is, right? You start the dua, it's like I don't know where have I reached. Then you flip flip the pages and oh wow, I'm like 10%, not even reached. It's a very long dua. It's a magnificent dua in the sense that it combines literally all those types. That's one. It's that it has everything. Secondly, the scholars tell us that Dua Abu Hamza speaks about themes. There are sections of Dua Abu Hamza that are not there in any other dua. So it has some unique things that Imam Zainul Abidin is speaking to Allah about, not found in anywhere else. So that's very special. Okay, what I'm just reading the first line. Allahumma inni as'aluka sabran jamila. It's a dua about your spirituality, about your akhlaq. So in your spiritual duas, you're asking Allah for makarimul akhlaq, good akhlaq. Last one, which is a bit, I gathered so many. This is the most weird one. So I'm going to read it. Allahumma inni as'aluka min jalalika bi ajalli wa kullu jalalika jalil. Allahumma inni as'aluka bi jalalika kulli. Which dua it is? Dua is sahar. Okay, so this is a special dua that's to be recited at the sahar time of the month of Ramadan. Highly recommended, but we don't know what it means. So I'm going to translate. If you know what it means, you can explain it to me. I'll be happy. So the dua is that Allahumma inni as'aluka. Oh Allah, I ask you. Allahumma inni as'aluka. Oh Allah, I ask you. Min jalalika, from your jalal, from your greatness. Bi ajallihi, the greatest of your greatness. Oh Allah, I'm asking you from your jalal, but not regular jalal. Ajallihi, the greatest of your jalal and that grandeur. But then you stop, and now you stop asking, and you say, but kullu jalalika jalil, but all your grandeur is at highest. So you start your dua by saying, oh Allah, give me from your jalal the highest of it. Then you pause and you say that, oh, but all of your jalal is at highest level. Kullu jalalika jalil. Then you change your dua, you say, Allahumma inni as'aluka bi jalalika kulli. I ask you from all of your jalal. Okay, I think jalal was a hard example. The same thing. Allahumma inni as'aluka min rahmatika bi awsa'iha. Oh Allah, I ask you from your mercy, but you're the most expansive of your mercy. I don't want your regular mercy. I want the most expansive of your mercy. Then you stop and you say, wa kullu rahmatika wasi'. But any mercy that you'll give is going to be infinite. And then you change the dua. Allahumma inni as'aluka bi rahmatika kulliha. I ask you from all types of your mercy, because there is no difference in your mercy. It's very hard to know what it's saying. And this is one of those du'as. I didn't bring the last sentence. The dua ends without a hajat. Basically, it's just like you are remembering Allah. So it looks like you're asking for hajat, but it's actually hamd. But it's like hamd done in a very special way. The ulama and scholars have written books to explain. So, for example, Imam Khomeini has a book, the same. Shar Dua Sahar. Don't read it. Don't read it. I don't know if it's translated in English. The reason I'm saying you don't read it is it won't make any sense to you. It's like a bit hi-fi, very difficult to understand what he's trying to say. It's a very difficult dua to understand. But just to read it is very beautiful. You see, right? I think there's like 27, 28 names of Allah. You do the same. So if Allahumma inni as'aluka bi mulkika bi afkharihi. Oh Allah, I ask you by your kingdom, the most afkhari. Then you say, wa kullu mulkika fakhir. Anyways, your kingdom is always going to be at the top. Allahumma inni as'aluka bi mulkika kulli. Okay, and you just keep saying this, and the dua ends without any hajj. So thank you very much for your time. So summarizing everything, the aim behind today's session was basically, if I go back, it was to describe the different elements that we have in the du'as. And basically just getting an overview of different types of things we can do, we're supposed to do in du'as. So inshallah, when we're reciting the du'as, we can quickly switch. And you say that, oh, this is hamd. And inshallah, in the next session, we'll discuss each of these sections have different goals and benefits that we receive. We do hamd for a set of reasons. It's needed We need, so basically next time we'll describe this, that it's a need. All of these are our needs. It's achieving certain goals, and we get a lot of benefits from these du'as if you, inshallah, someone is able to do it properly. So we end by praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that inshallah He gives us the tawfiq to understand the deeper meanings hidden in these du'as, and also He gives us the tawfiq to actually make that connection. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله